Hello there, I'm Alice Baxter. You're watching BBC World News. Our top stories this hour. A battle for control of the streets in Bangkok as police fight to stop anti-government protesters from taking over major buildings. A very warm welcome to you. Let's begin with our breaking news this hour. Local reports from New York say that at least 4 people have been killed, and according to the fire service, more than 60 people have been injured after a train derailed. Well, the Metropolitan Transport Authority police say the train came off the tracks near the Sputton Duvall station in the Bronx borough of the city. At least 5 carriages are believed to have come off the tracks. The Fire Department of New York says the derailment occurred at 07:20 in the morning local time and that 130 firefighters were on the scene. Well, these are live pictures that we're looking at now of the train crash scene in New York. There we go, emergency services on the scene trying to clear the wreckage and, of course, rescue any injured people. Just to recap what we know so far, according to the Metropolitan Transport Authority police, the train came off the tracks at around 07:20 in the morning local time. Firefighters very quickly on the scene, 130 of them. The latest that we have in terms of casualty numbers, and this from the New York police, at least 4 people we believe have been killed, and according to the fire service, more than 60 people have been injured. Well, the residents living close to the incident have described how they heard emergency services and later rushed to the scene.
Well, they took 2 people out on gurneys, so pretty much covered in blankets, so I guess they were fatalities.
We're not actually hearing confirmation yet from any authorities about fatalities. We're hearing that there are multiple injuries.
I saw 2 stretchers with the sheets covered.
Yes.
You live in this neighborhood. Did you hear all of this happen?
We heard from 7:15. We heard it was just continuous sirens. It was one siren after the next, siren, 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 and then we heard the helicopters, so field communications, and then we just came down.
Well, a short time ago, I spoke to Jessa Cunnington. She's one of the first reporters on the scene, and she described what she saw when she arrived.
You walk down, there are countless.
Also, a short time ago, the BBC's New York correspondent, Nick Bryant, gave me this update.
Looks a very dramatic scene, and 5 of the 9 railway cars have been derailed. The track there in the North Bronx runs alongside the River Hudson, and there's quite a sharp incline down to the river, and some of the derailed carriages have gone down that incline, but they have stopped short of going into the river, thankfully. But obviously it's a very confused scene there at the moment. The fire department is rescuing people. They've set up a triage to sort out who is seriously injured and the more minor injuries. But it does look like there will be a significant number. I mean, fortunately, this was early on a Sunday morning. It is a holiday weekend, not the Monday morning rush hour. So that would have limited the number of people travelling on that train. But clearly this is a very serious incident. There are lots of ambulances on the scene ferrying people to hospital as we speak. As I said, there's a triage that's been set up there to find out who needs the most urgent attention and who needs to be ferried to hospital or treated at the scene most urgently. And it's quite a confused situation still. I mean, this happened just after 7 o'clock in the morning. The train was travelling into New York. Grand Central Station was its destination, and it was then that it derailed. Some passengers are saying that it was travelling faster than usual as it approached the station. That may be a clue, it may not be. But clearly it's a very serious incident. If you've seen the photos, some of the carriages are at 90 degrees to each other.
Me talking to Nick Bryant a little bit earlier. Let's just remind you as to what we know about this train derailment that took place in New York City. We know that it happened at 07:20 local time and that more than 130 firefighters were on the scene. This is the scene at the moment. The latest line that we have in terms of casualties is that at least 4 people have been killed, and according to the New York City Fire Service, more than 60 people have been injured. Well, the Metropolitan Transport Authority police say that the train came off the tracks, which is near the Spuyten Duyvil station in the Bronx borough of the city, and that at least 5 carriages are believed to have come off the tracks. Of course, the rescue effort is still ongoing, and we will keep you updated on it as we continue to get more details on the number of casualties out of this train crash out of New York City. Well, let's move on now, because over in Ukraine, anti-government protesters have smashed their way into City Hall in the capital, Kiev. Big demonstrations have been taking place, calling for President Viktor Yanukovych to stand down. Demonstrations began more than a week ago against Mr. Yanukovych's refusal to sign a landmark trade pact with the European Union. Opposition leaders have called for early elections. Well, the BBC's Steve Rosenberg is on the line for us live from Kiev. And Steve, we know that the protesters have smashed their way into the City Hall. What's happening now?
Well, I'm on Independence Square in the centre of Kiev. There's been a large protest going on all afternoon here. Some of the protesters have gone. There's still a large crowd here. It's been peaceful here for most of the afternoon. But as you mentioned, there have been isolated violent incidents in another part of the city. A number of protesters broke into City Hall and declared their own city administration in there. Police have been trying to remove them. And I was in one place near the presidential administration this afternoon, where a group of protesters were trying to break their way through police lines to get close to the presidential office. It was a completely chaotic scene. The police were firing stun grenades and tear gas, quite difficult to breathe at times. The protesters replied by throwing bricks and other things, and gradually the riot police were moving, pushing the protesters back. So these have been happening on the fringes of the main meeting, but the main meeting where there were tens of thousands of protesters has been peaceful.
Steve, it sounds like things are really reaching a crescendo in Kiev. How are government forces and the police, how are they reacting to what's happening on the streets there?
It's interesting. Here on Independence Square, we've hardly seen any police for most of the day, despite the fact that a court in Kiev had banned protests and rallies on Independence Square and other places in the city centre. It's a different scene if you go away from the square, as I said, by the presidential administration building, by the government. There have been a lot of special forces trying to protect that building, and at City Hall, forces trying to reclaim that building.
OK, Steve, many thanks for keeping us updated. The BBC Steve Rosenberg, therefore, live on the line from Kiev. Now, the leader of the anti-government demonstrations taking place in Thailand has called for a general strike starting on Monday. His supporters are trying to topple the government of Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra, while protesters trying to force their way into the presidential building and other government offices were repeatedly beaten back by tear gas and water cannon. More serious clashes in one part of the city have left 4 people dead and dozens injured. Jonathan Head reports. Welcome back. This is BBC World News with me, Alice Baxter. The latest headlines. A train derails in the Bronx borough of New York City. There are local reports of 4 dead. What we know so far is that the derailment happened at 07:20 in the morning local time, and that 130 firefighters were very quickly on the scene. The latest of information that we have in terms of casualties is that, according to local reports, 4 people have been killed, and according to the fire service, more than 60 people have been injured. Well, the Metropolitan Transport Authority police say that the train came off the tracks near the Spuyten Duyvil station, which is, as I was saying, in the Bronx borough of the city. At least 5 carriages are believed to have come off the track. According to eyewitnesses that we've spoken to, the train appeared to be going a lot faster than usual as it approached the curve coming into the station. But we will, of course, bring you more on that train crash as we get it here at BBC World News. Well, let's get more now on our top story. Reports from New York that at least 4 people have been killed, and according to the fire service, more than 60 people have been injured after a train derailed. Well, our world affairs correspondent Andy Moore has the latest. Okay, let's remind you now of our breaking news this hour. It's our top story. This train crash in New York. Reports are that at least 4 people have been killed, and according to the fire service, more than 60 people have been injured after a train derailed. It was a Metro North train that derailed at 7:20 a.m. local time. According to eyewitnesses' report, the train was carrying was going a lot faster than usual. We are still unclear, though, as to the cause of the crash. More details to come on BBC World News. The BBC Persian's New York correspondent Bahman Kalbasi is at the train crash site, and he joins us live now from there. Bahman, how would you describe the scene at the moment?
As you probably can see in the live pictures, and some of them, I will move this very, very slowly. Firefighters at the scene, hundreds of them, along with police officers. As you can see, the front car has got very, very close to the water. And then, as we know, over 100 passengers have been on this train, 67 of them, according to Ray Kelly. The police chief minutes ago here gave a presser, said 67 of them are hospitalized, 10 or 11 critically injured, and as we know, 4 dead. 3 of those were ejected from the train when it derailed just past 7 a.m. this morning here in Bronx. Obviously, a lot of questions, especially since in July, this very same location was a site of another issue with the train. So there were a lot of questions about why did that not get enough attention and questions. Ray Kelly, the chief police officer, said will be answered as soon as they have all the evidence.
And Bahman, clearly the local community there still in a state of shock about this. And as you say, many questions being asked. The number one question, why did this happen? Some eyewitnesses that we've been speaking to have said that the train seemed to be going a lot faster than usual.
And the engineer apparently talked about issues with the train minutes ago, minutes before the derailment. But Ray Kelly, the chief police, was saying that we will hold that information so we can come to a full conclusion. But there's no doubt that I'll turn this again, and you'll see the apartment buildings that oversee this station, people hanging outside of their balconies looking over all morning, wondering why and how this happened again.
OK, Bahman, many thanks for keeping us updated. Bahman Kalbasi there at the site of that train crash in the Bronx borough of New York City. Well, the BBC's Daria Taradai joins me live now from Kiev. Daria, describe the scene for me right now, if you would, in Kiev. I know that we have these 2 camps of protesters, one storming the City Hall and the others camped out on Independence Square.
Yes, exactly. We have now 2 centers of the protest. One of them is near the Independence Center in Kiev. It is peaceful. There are hundreds of thousands of people. They came with small children. They came with their relatives. There are some elderly people, and they are peaceful there. They are just saying different slogans. They have different messages on the papers. They have flags of the European Union and of Ukraine, and they are protesting against the violence which riot police used against the demonstrators on Saturday night, and against the decision of Ukrainian government not to sign the association agreement with the European Union. And also we have another center of the protesters near the presidential office, near the administration of Viktor Yanukovych. And according to the last information, there were riots there. Police tried to stop several hundreds of the protesters who were trying to storm presidential administration, and riot police used tear gas against them, truncheons and flash grenades. But Ukrainian oppositions tried to distance themselves from those aggressive protesters, and they say that probably there are some provocations or possibly made by the government or pro-governmental forces or by some aggressive groups.
Daria, you've described how the police are reacting to that group of protesters who forcibly tried to make their way into City Hall. But how are police reacting to those thousands of people currently camped out on Independence Square who seem to show no signs of leaving?
The situation at the Independence Square now is quite peaceful, so we do not have information about any clash or any violence at the Independence Square. And police, now it looks like the police is trying just to control the situation, just to observe, but not to interrupt, not to not to make people to leave from the Independence Square. And we also have some messages from the Ukrainian government. They said that the situation now is under their control, and they will not use violence against peaceful demonstrators.
Daria, many thanks for an update. The BBC's Daria Taradai there joining me live from Kiev. Now, thousands of Christians have gathered at the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem this afternoon, where the Christmas lights are being turned on. Last year, the tree was decorated with 45,000 lights and 6,500 baubles. That is a lot of baubles. Well, our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell is at Manger Square in Bethlehem, and she joins me live now. Yolande, how excited are people in that square behind you right now?